Okay, we are live, I think. Um, I'm not sure. Can someone tell me if everything's fine? Like, can you hear me? Can you see things well before I start? Okay, I think everything's fine. Okay, so I will probably start and just start telling what it's going to be about and what is the stream is all about. And yeah, so just like the name said, is going to be a live stream on Rasa SDK, and I'm going to explain what it is all about later on. But I will start probably with introduction of who I am and what I do. So my name is Juste. I am a developer advocate at Rasa. I focus on developer education and building Rasa open source community. So if you will have any feedback during the stream, for me, I would love to hear that. And if you will have any questions, please also send them to me. I will make time to answer them. Yeah, so this stream is going to be a little bit different from the previous one. So it's actually the second Rasa stream that we did. And instead of actually doing one long tutorial, this time I'm going to talk about all the new things and all the new features that were introduced to Rasa. And I'm going to show you like bits and pieces, so it's not going to be like a one long tutorial, as I said, but I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. So I think people who already tried to do something with Rasa, and especially those who had a chance to look into Rasa Core 11, are going to benefit the most from the stream because, yeah, as I said, I'm going to look into all the new things and all the changes that were introduced. But also, if you are new to Rasa and if you have never used Rasa before, I think the stream is still going to be useful because, as I said, I'm going to show you a lot of things. So if you are just getting started, I think it's going to be a good way to learn about what can you do with Rasa Core. Yeah, so great. I think I can actually go ahead and start. So, okay. So as I said, this stream is going to be about new release of Rasa Core, so Rasa Core 11, and Rasa Core SDK, which is a new addition to Rasa Stack in a way. So I think I'm going to start with speaking about Rasa Core SDK, what it is about, and or like why it's useful in general. So here I have a GitHub repo of Rasa Core SDK. So if you never used it before, check it out. So basically, Rasa Core SDK is as we call it, a super damn cool piece of software that should help you to implement custom actions with Rasa Core a lot easier. And the main benefit that comes from Rasa Core SDK is that it makes your custom actions run on completely different server, which means that you can update your custom actions separately from entire agent. And so every single time you make a change to a custom action, you don't have to restart the entire agent. So that's a big benefit. And for those who are new to Rasa, custom actions are actions that a chatbot makes when an action is predicted, and those actions can be connecting to the database and retrieving some data, or making an API call, and a lot of things. Yeah. So, okay. So if you actually had a chance to look into some Rasa Core SDK related things, so we have updated documentation on that end as well. But I'm going to show you by example, like Sorry, I just looking. Okay, I was just checking chat. So another reminder, I'm looking at the questions. So if you have any, please post them because I would be happy to answer. Yeah, so back to SDK and custom actions. So I'm going to show you by example how to migrate custom action that was implemented in earlier versions of Rasa Core to the new Rasa Core using Rasa Core SDK. So for this, I'm going to use a very simple example. And I already have a pre-built kind of chatbot. So here's my project. And it's kind of usual architecture of assistant built with Rasa. So I have data, I have models that I trained previously, and I have actions and so on. So here I'm just going to show you how to actually migrate an action. The chatbot that I'm using here is going to be very simple. It just tells jokes if I ask for any. So to migrate custom action to the new version of Rasa Core using Rasa Core SDK, you have to do a few things. So the first one is, so let's say you have action, custom action implemented already. And one thing that you have to do in your actions.py file is to change the import. So instead of importing from like Rasa Core, you should import action class from Rasa Core SDK because we are using Rasa Core SDK from now on. So the first change the imports inside the custom action file. All the other things are exactly the same. Nothing changed. I'm still using a class for a custom action, and I'm still having the same functions, a name that is defining the name of the action, and then the run function, which is basically a body of the custom action, which defines what a chatbot actually has to do. So in this example, just making a simple API call to retrieve a joke. Okay, so actions.py done. Second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to my domain file. And here, again, usual domain file as always, intents entities, slots if I have any actions and templates. And the change that I have to do is in actions part. So in the old version of Rasa Core, we had to provide the class path. So since I had my class action joke in actions.py file, I provided actions.actionJoke. After the migration, here I should include only the actual name of the action. So I'll go back to actions.py. So the name of my custom action was action_joke. So this is what I have to provide to my domain file instead of class name. So I'm going to do that. So it's action_joke. All the things are the same. All the other things are the same. One thing that I only want to mention that if you are writing some templates that has to be executed as actions, they now need to have utter underscore prefix so that the Rasa Core SDK would see them as actions that have to be executed. Great. So actions.py done, domain done. The last thing that is needed to run this custom action as a server is an actual webhook. And using Rasa Core SDK, we have to initialize this webhook. And this happens in endpoints.yaml file. So this is the additional file that from now on, if you're using new version of Rasa Core, you have to create and call it endpoints.yaml. And here you have to provide the webhook. URL for your webhook. So basically what kind of port and what kind of host your action server is going to run on. And that's it. These three things that have to be taken into consideration when migrating custom actions. Now I'm going to show you how to actually run all this thing. Let's go to command line. I'll probably use it here. Okay, just here. So at first, I will just train my Rasa core model. Usual stuff, nothing changed. I will just call Rasa core train. I should provide domain file, which is YAML, then my training data. So I have it in data folder. It's called stories MD, and also where it's going to be saved. So let's say I'll save it in current, and I will call it dialogue, and let's see 200 epochs. Okay, let's run. So this will train my Rasa core model using all these changes that I made in action file and in domain file and so on. Great, so it's trained, and now let's run it. Now I'm going to start the server for Rasa core. Okay, so to do that, I will start exactly the same way. Rasa core, Rasa core, and I'm going to call run function, and I will provide the models. So I have models, current, dialogue, and I also have an NLU model which I trained previously, so it's saved in models current NLU. And here is another change. So now, since I have this endpoints a YAML which has a configuration of my webhook, I have to provide this as a parameter so that Rasa core would know what kind of server this custom action is going to run on. So I'm going to do that by providing a parameter called endpoints. And it is in endpoints.yaml file. So let's run this. And while it's loading, great. So my Rasa core model is loaded, but before I actually test it, I'm going to start the server for my custom action. So for this, I will need another command prompt. And here, I will start this additional server for custom action. So to do that, I will call Python again. And here, I'm going to use Rasa core SDK, because this is what it is for, Rasa core SDK. And let's call endpoint. And let's provide actions. Okay, I think that's good. So you can see that it registered function for action joke, so my custom action that I had implemented, and now it is up and running on this on localhost on port 5055. So this basically loads my model. Let's test it. I hope I hope it's going to work well. So. Please don't pay attention to these warnings. It comes from, I think from sklearn. And also you can see here, so I said hello, and my chatbot responded, hey there, tell me your name. And as you can see, it made a request to my webhook of custom actions. So I'll say, my name is Juste. So here I will ask for a joke, which hopefully will work. Yeah. So this chatbot basically tells Chuck Norris jokes, and it's just an example. So as you can see, it returned the joke, and it made a call, which was taken care of by my custom action server. So this is how you do it. It's really not complicated. And again, as I said, the main advantage here is that if I would want to change my custom action right now, I could keep my Rasa core agent running, and I could just make changes, save it, restart my custom action server, and those changes would be picked up So it's a lot easier to um, it's a lot easier to make changes and to develop your chatbot. Great. Another thing that I wanted to show you that is related to this is, okay, so now my chatbot is running here and I can actually talk to my chatbot on the console. How do I make a HTTP request if, for example, I wanted to call this server from a different stack of code? So it's actually pretty simple. So I'm going to keep my actions server running because it's good. It's independent from Rasa core agent. And I'm going to show you the change that I'm going to do. So the call function is actually, and the load function is actually going to be very similar. The only thing that I'm going to change here is I'm going to add one additional parameter, which is called enable API. Once I do that, then I can make HTTP requests and send them to Rasa core, and Rasa core will then, if a custom action is predicted, will make a call, make a request to custom action server and retrieve data. So let's provide this enable API, and all the other things are the same. Rasa core run, I enable API, I load my dialog model, NLU model, and I keep endpoints as they were. So let's start the server again. Great, and now I'm just going to show you an example. Oh, actually, so I was testing things before the stream, so I actually have an example here already written. So I'm just going to make a post request to my Rasa core server, which is running on localhost 5005, and I'm using the endpoint respond, and this endpoint is going to return the response back. So an actual response, not the predicted action as it was in the older version of Rasa core, but the actual response. So I'm just sending simple message, hello there. So let's try. Yeah. So as you can see, it returned the response directly back to me. Yeah, so here I actually also wanted to show you a little bit on the docs where it was. Okay, so it's in HTTP API. So just to show you and talk a little bit about the endpoints, because they also changed a little. Some endpoints were removed, and they because it just works in a little bit different way right now. So respond, it was the one that I used, and it returns the actual message that was predicted and executed inside the Python code as we had. Then we can get tracker details, so what is the current action, and then like latest message, confidence, and so on. Also, we can send events. So if you want to send additional details to your bot, like slots or some kind of actions, you can do that as well. With these endpoints, yeah, we have tracker events, which basically updates the tracker with additional details if you need. And you also can check the version and things like that. Great. I will just quickly check. Yeah, so I'm just quickly looking at the chat part. So is there an option to update the custom actions without restarting the SDK server? And no, I think at least for now you do have to restart the SDK server so that the changes would be picked up. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this was the part about SDK stuff. Now I'm going to show you a few additional things that were introduced to Rasa Core as well. So there are different ways, for example, of loading training data in a stories format and so on. So let's dive in. So the thing that I was speaking about, I'm not sure exactly where it was right now. I think here, yeah. So there is a new parameter in Rasa Core training, is that you can train your, you can provide training data to Rasa Core train function by calling URL. So we usually used to have this requirement that you have to provide stories data, but also now you can actually use a URL. And that also is a good addition to making your the architecture of your chatbot cleaner and make it easier to make updates and not to have all the things in one place. So, for example, even if you if you have an API for your training data, it's even better. So I'm going to show you an example how to do that by actually creating a little server for my data. So it's just a very simple Flask app that I just quickly wrote. So what it does, it just simply loads and returns my stories data. So I will start this server. Okay, so it is running, and now I'm just going to show you how it actually gets picked up. So if you remember at the very beginning of the stream, I used, I actually trained my model and I provided stories data as, why you don't stop? I provided stories data as an actual file. So let me go back to this. Yeah, so here. So this is kind of, it's not really the old way, but the usual way as we used to do. So Rasa Core train, provide domain file, and we provide stories data, and then we save the model. Now I'm going to show you how you can train the model by providing the URL. So my server is running on localhost port 5000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide the parameter here. Instead of S, I will provide URL because we are going to use URL here instead. And now instead of actual data stories markdown file, I'm going to provide the URL that Rasa Core should retrieve this data from. So let's try. Local host, and it's running on 5000. Okay, so let's try. Yeah, so as you can see, it trains. And again, this time instead of, and you can see here, it made a get HTTP request. It returned this data from this little Flask app that I wrote. Great, so that is one of the new things that were added. So use it and tell us how is it helpful and if you like it or not. Another thing that changed is it changed a little bit, like how we can start interactive learning, because I saw some people I got some questions on the forum that train online is gone, and that like now you can't really train models interactive learning. Yeah, I'm just looking at the comment section at the same time. Great. So yeah, about interactive learning. So as I said, it's now it is a little bit different. So I'm going to use my chatbot that I'm using here just to show you how you can actually launch interactive learning session using new Rasa Core. So it's going to be very, very similar as it used to be. So I will call Rasa Core train because we're going to actually train. the model at the beginning, and here I will provide the parameter online, which will tell Rasa core that we are going to launch this in a interactive learning session. And then all the things are exactly the same. Actually, I could reuse, but so I will go back to usual stories data. Stories MD. Yeah, and I should provide my NLU model, which was in current NLU. And where we are going to save this model, so I will say models, I will call it online, dialog, and how many epochs? No earphones. Epochs. Oh, I can't type anymore. Okay, let's try. Yeah, so basically the main thing is that you have to provide online parameter to launch online training session. And now it's going to train the model and hopefully it's going to start. Yeah, so as you can see now, as usual, just like how it used to be, my online training session should be running. Yeah, so I said hello and I get the confidence, I get the intent, and then it asks me what things I should do next. Also, if you are wondering, you can definitely still do all that using Python. Like you not necessarily have to launch everything from the command line and using these functions. So I think I have like an example code. Yeah, so it's basically here. So how I would try to launch this using Python only. So I would define interpreter. I would define the endpoint, which I think I forgot to provide in my previous. Yeah, I did forget to to provide when I ran it on the command line. So I provide the endpoint, and then I load the agent as usual. So where it should where the model is. So what is the interpreter? What is the endpoint? And then we start the online training session. So just like it used to be, like the only difference is that if you have a custom actions, you should probably provide the endpoint here. Great. Now, what else? Oh, yeah. So we had a lot of changes for input and output channels. I saw quite a lot of discussions for console input channel and console output channel being gone and so on. So yes, it is deprecated, and for now, if you want to load your chatbot and start running, so you should either use run function, which I used previously, for example this one, or you can also use Python for that as well. This is just one of the examples. So again, just load your NLU model, provide the endpoint configuration, load the agent, and then just call run function. And you can also provide what kind of channel you want as a parameter. And this would start my agent in a command line exactly the same way as I had previously using this function in the command line. So it's all the same, but what I was saying, yeah. So there also are a lot of changes for connectors. So for example, if you have a custom connector, I'm pretty sure right now it has to inherit input channel instead of HTTP input channel. So I'm actually going to show you one example. I'm going to connect this chatbot that I'm using here to Slack to actually show you by example what changed. I have my assistant, it's running, and I have the code which was connecting to Slack. Yeah, so this is just a very simple code. And what we have here is, again, I define my action endpoints, and I define my agent and load it. So where is the dialog management model, what is the interpreter, and what action endpoints I'm using. And here, what I'm doing is I'm loading my credentials. And I'm not really sure if actually credentials changed much. Let me just quickly, where was it? Here. So credentials file, basically, I will go to Slack to show an actual example. So this is how this credentials.yaml should look like. So you should provide your Slack token that you get once you create a Slack app. And if you want, you can provide the Slack channel that you would like your chatbot to respond at. So that's how my credentials YAML looks like, but I'm not going to show it because it's not a good practice to show tokens and sensitive information like that. So basically, I'm just loading it here. And I should remove this print as well because it can print out. And then what I do, I define input channel. I'm using Slack input, so inbuilt Rasa Slack connector, and I provide Slack token. I have this assistant as joke bot, so this is the channel that I will use. And now I call agent.handle channels. So this is one of the changes. Instead of handle channel as it used to be, now we call handle channels, and you can provide a list of input channels that you would like to use. So I'm going to use one here, which is going to be Slack, and then just as it used to be, I provide the port, and I want this server to run a long time. Great, so that's all. What I'm going to do, I'm going to run this. Yeah, so I will just start with from Python, and it was connecting to Slack. So this will start the agent. And what I also have is I have the ngrok running, so that's how I'm going to expose my chatbot to the outside world. And while it's loading, I'm actually going to the Slack configuration, and I'm going to show you how the webhook changed, because this is another change that happened. So I'm going to use my good old bot called Frank. Yeah, so the thing that we have to provide is in event subscriptions. And this is where we have to provide the URL for our events. And I think it's the same. So the main change is here, is that we have to use this endpoint, webhooks, Slack, webhook. If you wanted to connect your assistant to Facebook, then it would be, the endpoint would be webhooks, Facebook, webhook, and so on. Yeah, so this is the change. And let's try. I think it should work. I will just double check. I think it's running. All good. Let's see if it responds. I will say hello. Hey. Hey there. How can I help? Tell me a joke, Frank. Yeah. So that works. So again, the main change is the webhook, that now we have to use webhooks, channel name webhook, and a few, no, it's not the one, and the few changes here. So is that we have to use agent handle channels, and that if you're using custom actions, you should also define the endpoint configuration. Great. I'm checking if I have anything else. Oh, actually, I will look through the questions. Okay, I see some people, yeah, saying that it's actually really useful to load data using URL, because, for example, if you have S3 or somewhere on the cloud or on your custom server, it's really good to store your data and then retrieve it using API. Also, can we connect this online trainer to a UI? So at least for now, Rasa doesn't have a UI for interactive learning. But if you would like to contribute and if you would like to work on that, it's definitely very common question from our community. So I can see a big demand for a UI for interactive learning, because I have to agree it's not the most comfortable one to use, at least for now. But yeah, at least for now, Rasa doesn't come with a UI for that. Okay. Let's see. Great. Another thing. Oh, actually, how to add multiple endpoints and how Rasa know which one to pick up. That is a good question. I think I have to test this out myself before. So if you can post this question on the forum, it would be great. I will look into, and I will actually respond with an actual example on that. Great. And then another thing that I wanted to show was a new embedding policy. So this is actually an addition to Rasa Core, because Rasa Core not only comes with these changes for the webhooks and all that stuff, but also improvements on policies and the models themselves. So I'm just going to quickly show you the policy and where it was. It was here. So the new policy, which was added to Rasa Core, is called Embedding policy. I'm not going to show actual examples, because I think it would be best for me to probably either do a tutorial or do a separate stream, because it's quite, as you can see, quite a lot of things to cover. But I just wanted to point this out and to let you know that there is a new embedding policy, and what it is designed to do is it is designed to handle chit chat and repeat the action that was predicted before the chit chat happened. And this policy can basically remind and repeat that question that happened before the chit chat. So it would be good if you could test it out on your own data sets, and I would love to get your feedback on that as well. Like, how does it work for you, and what kind of feedback you have. Does it work? Maybe it doesn't for you. So we would love to get any opinions on that from you. Yeah, and how to use it is just as usual. So we should have an example. Yeah, so when we define what kind of policy we would like to use, for example, for training, and then when we define policies, it should be defined as embedding policy. So yeah, so definitely give it a try and let us know. Great. Yeah, so I think these are the main things that I wanted to cover. Right, and also if you have more questions, I think now it's the time that I wanted to dedicate for answering questions if you have more of them. And while you're thinking of what to ask, I can also mention a few additional things. Is that if you are not part of Rasa community yet, please make sure to join Rasa forum. Which looks like this. It's a super cool place where the community hangs out, and as you can see, we have lots of questions and we do our best to help out everyone. And if you have any questions from this stream as well, please post them here. I will get back to them as soon as I can. Also, all the things that I covered here, they will be saved as a video, so you will find this on YouTube, and it should stay on Twitch as well. But also we have some plans to make a tutorial to cover all these changes in a written format, so that it would be easier for you to get started. And if you have any feedback on Rasa Core SDK, Rasa Core, the migration, please also share your feedback with me or share or write your thoughts on the forum, because this is how we improve and this is how we make Rasa better. So it's super useful to get something from actual users of Rasa. Great. So oh, yeah, and one thing, it's actually really important. So all the things that I covered, they are also mentioned in migration guide. So in the docs, Rasa Core docs, we have developer documentation and there is migration guide. So definitely check this out, because all the changes are also written in this clear and concise format. So most of the stuff that changed is here. And also definitely check the changelog, which also has all the information that was added, that was changed, that was removed, that was fixed, and keep that in mind. Okay, so if you haven't shown, I'm sorry. Okay, so how the webhook is defined, sure, no problem, I can show that again. So this is my endpoints.yaml file, and what you have to do is you have to define action endpoint and provide the URL. And this can be, I'm using localhost. If you want to, you can use different different port and different host. So it depends, but that's how it's used. Any more questions, or maybe I should provide some more details and repeat anything that maybe I said something too fast? Yeah, so in story, how those actions are valid, you don't have to list it in the main. Yeah, so I will just quickly do a recap of the entire structure of how that actually works. And maybe I will also open the data. I have stories data here. So this is my stories data that I used to train my joke bot. And where it was. Oh, yeah. So this is an example story where I have a joke intent and the action is predicted. Action joke. So this is my custom action where a bot would make an API call to retrieve a joke. Then I have my domain file. In a domain file, I have all intents, entities, slots, and so on. And this is where I list the actions. So as you can see, this action joke is written like that, the actual name, not a class name anymore, the actual action name. So then I have the code of this custom action joke, which is in the actions.py file. So it's here, and here I define the name of the action, just like it used to be all the time, and that's it. And then when I start the server, which I think I still have running, yeah, so I still have it running. So when I start the server using this endpoints, using endpoint, which then looks up my endpoints YAML file and takes the requests that are sent by Rasa core, then it makes the predictions and then it executes the custom action. And again, when you launch the Rasa core, you have to also provide your endpoints.yaml file. So this is the one way you have your webhook configuration. So when you do that, when you tell Rasa core what server your custom action will run, then it knows where to make the calls. Great. So again, if there is anything else that I should repeat, please tell me, because I know it was a lot. And again, there were a lot of changes to Rasa core. But I think, honestly, from unbiased opinion, I think it's really for the better. At least having actions and the agent on different servers. At least for me, it makes it a lot easier to update the chatbot, and especially when you build bigger chatbots, it's really tedious to restart the entire agent all the time, and sometimes it takes quite a long time. So it's a lot more seamless development right now. But if you have different opinions, I would love to get them, and or if you have similar opinions as well, definitely tell me. And other guys in Rasa, because as I said, we really value the feedback, so it is the only way how we can improve. Okay, I can see we have another question. So it's the question about slots and usernames and passwords. I'm not sure, like, what exactly do you mean by multiple slots? Because you can definitely create a slot that would store the username and the one that would store the password if you need that. And then they would be picked up, retrieved as slots, just like it used to be. So for example, if here I would have a custom action authentication or something like that, let's say, you could just retrieve the slot, let's say username, which would be with tracker, get slot, and you would retrieve, a slot username, and the same for the password. I'm not sure if that answers your question. but as I said, basically, like the simple approach would be, of course, to include them in a domain, a slot. So here I have a slot for name. So you can have the slot for username, for password as well, and then train an NLU model so that they would be extracted from user inputs, and then they would be stored as slots, and then you can retrieve them and send. Okay, so then make sure to also post it on the forum so that we could look into it. Oh, that's a really good question. When we can expect to have Frank, the weather bot, grow in Rasa core? I am going to to update this as soon as possible. Probably either at the end of today or tomorrow. But yeah, it's definitely going to move to Rasa core 11. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for today. If you have any additional questions, as I said, please post them on forum. I will promise I will read them all, and I will do my best to answer them, and also share your feedback and experience with the new Rasa core and Rasa core SDK. It's super useful, and also stay tuned for more streams. I think we will definitely keep doing them if you find them useful, and also there should be more tutorials on different parts of Rasa and features and so on. So yeah, it was really nice to talk to you. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something, and let's talk the next time. Now I'm going to do this inception thing again. Okay, bye bye, guys.